Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Basics of Life. My name's Ken Burkey, and Scott Center is sitting to my left. That's Scott Center right there, and glad you're here. Last show we talked about the Raiders draft. We didn't talk about. We were going to talk about LeBron James and how he has chosen to go back to college. He's picked Sac State as his place to
which I think is going to help them very much.
Now, he never went to college, so could he?
Yeah, I think you still have
eligibility.
Yeah, eligibility.
He would just have to give up the money.
Right.
Could
you imagine that?
That would be.
He'd take Sac State to the Final Four and take the whole thing, man.
What you could do is you could play your whole career. I don't know this. We may be totally wrong. But could you play your whole career, and when you're 38 and you're done, you just retire and then give up the money and go back to college? Could he play in college?
I'm not sure, but I know that you're eligible. I mean, you haven't played.
We're having someone look that up right now.
Right, and that's what this show's about.
Right. Thanks for being with us here on the Basics of Life. You can always go back. That's what we're talking about.
You can always turn the channel, too.
Yes. Let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
I wonder if, well, that would be sad if they could actually find out how many times, it turns to our show and then they turn it quickly.
Turn it off. That would be.
Hopefully they never come up with that kind of.
Self-esteem would be crushed.
Yeah. Well, we'd never be asked to come back.
Right.
Hey, we're going to talk about courage today?
Yeah, we're talking about courage. There you go. Important issue.
All right, I think I have the courage to get through this.
Yeah.
Okay, why do you want to talk about courage?
Well, but I think because, first of all, everybody wrestles with fear of some kind or another. I mean, some people are afraid of snakes, some people are afraid of public speaking. Everybody wrestles with fear. So, you have a choice. You can either allow fear to control your life, or you can move forward with courage. And I love what Nelson Mandela said about this issue. He says, the brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Mm-hmm. And I love that. And you think about just Nelson Mandela's life and all the fears that he had to confront, but the huge amount of change that he made by just steps of courage.
Yeah. Courage is needed in small ways and in just huge ways. It takes courage to be a parent.
Absolutely.
It takes courage to do the right thing when it's easier to do the wrong thing. Courage to stand up, for people that don't have anything when you might get ridiculed. And there's just a lot of need for this.
And there's just an interesting study just before we get going, because some psychologists did some research on this, and they asked people a question. It says, when you face like a fear-producing situation, what do? Do you take action, face it head on, or do you run and hide? And what they found out is that people who avoid fear-producing situations, even if the situation looks like it turns out okay, that they didn't confront it or move forward on it, the truth is something happens inside of you that says, but I wimped out. I didn't take the hard road. And what they said is that becomes a pattern over time. You, as an individual, come to see yourself as someone who lacks confidence, that cannot cope with life's, challenges. And the more you succumb to fear, the more and more your life is polarized from moving forward and changing and doing the things you want to do.
Yeah, which affects self-esteem, confidence, all of those kind of things.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and you think about what people are remembered for who made a difference in their families' lives or made changes in our culture or our world, they're always known as courageous people.
Right.
And like you said earlier, they were people who they were probably afraid. They probably were dealing with fear. It wasn't like they weren't afraid, but they dealt with it.
Absolutely.
And that's many times the difference between a great life and a mediocre life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do you become more courageous in life?
Well, here's some principles.
Like the Cowardly Lion,
Right.
what didn't he have?
Courage. He didn't have courage.
Oh, he didn't have courage.
That's why they called him the Cowardly Lion.
The cowardly, but I thought he didn't have courage because he didn't have a brain. No, that was the Tin Man.
Right.
He didn't have a heart.
He didn't have a. No, the Tin Man didn't have a heart.
Oh.
The lion just didn't have any courage.
Okay.
That's why they call him the Cowardly Lion.
I was making this way more complicated. I've never watched The Wizard of Oz all the way through. It's like 8 hours long.
Right. Should we switch roles today? Or?
Yeah. No, because I have nothing to say. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, so how do we become more courageous?
Okay. Well, these are just principles for us to work on, and none of this is perfect. It's kind of, courage is kind of a messy thing because you never do it perfectly. But the first one is you have to start with facing battles within. Battling with the things that are inside of you, the self-esteem issues and those kind of things. And there is one classic courage killer that we all get sucked into.
One classic courage killer.
Yeah, and I said that slow so I wouldn't mess it up.
One classic courage killer. I like that.
Yeah, it's comparing. Mm-hmm. When you compare yourself with the people around you, you always tend to come up short. Mm-hmm. You always wish you had this or that, their talents, their money, their influence, their whatever.
Right.
And you tend to come up short. And when you start comparing yourself with the people around you, usually what you do is you take a second seat or a third seat or a fourth seat, and you just tend to stay put. Mm-hmm. You won't step out and do.
Right.
So that is a classic courage killer, is comparing. And that's one of the things that all of us does.
Yeah.
I mean, we all do that.
Yeah, I was thinking too, when you also, we have to recognize, why are we struggling with this? Because again, we all wrestle with different, so there's things that I'm afraid of that you're not,
right.
Things you're afraid of, and you got to kind of wrestle with why too.
Right.
That's an important thing too.
Absolutely, that's a big deal. And what's interesting though is like you're unafraid of some things and I'm unafraid of some things. You're afraid of some, I'm afraid. But what I'll do is when I match mine against yours, I always feel like, oh, well, I'm a loser.
Yeah, right.
Right. Even though I have some that I'm not afraid of.
Right.
So you do have to wrestle with that, and that comes with some soul searching. That comes with maybe some counseling.
Yeah.
That comes with healthy friendships.
Right.
And community. I think those things are really important. The Bible gives us wisdom on this. It says those that measure themselves by themselves are unwise.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the core of it is to understand, and this is what I think sometimes people miss about how God thinks about us.
Yeah.
We're each individually and uniquely made, custom made by God. People have a hard time grasping that concept.
Yeah, because our culture compares.
Exactly.
Everything's a comparison.
Yeah.
And so it's such the opposite of what God says. We're all individually, creatively made, wonderfully made. There's no one like us.
Right.
But our culture is totally opposite of that.
Right. And so what I would say is, as you wrestle with the whys, I think you got to get down somewhere at some point in that wrestling with the core and understand who you are in the eyes of God. Because when you do that, that gives you a basis now to start going, okay, I've got these things, but this is who God designed me to be. But I need to work on these things. I don't need to compare myself with you.
The only way, good comparing, or not comparing, but just remembering everybody's afraid.
Yes.
Everybody's afraid.
Everybody's afraid of
something.
something.
People are better, at pretending they're not.
Right.
But everybody deals with fear.
Right.
So there is that common ground.
Yeah, there's an illustration that I don't have all together, but it talks about, the cat's afraid of the dog and the dog's afraid of this, and it goes up to the lion and the lion's afraid of the elephant and the elephant's afraid of the mouse.
Right. Yeah.
It goes all the way back down.
We're all afraid of something.
Yeah.
And that's important too, because once we know this is a normal thing, it's not about getting rid of the fear, it's about
moving through it.
So how do you do that? Well, you already said the first part here.
Yeah, I think one of the steps is you have to take a step of letting go of the familiar. So that's one of the ways you do it.
What does that mean?
So we get in comfort zones, and we get very comfortable in our life, and what happens is when you stay in that, you get comfortable, you get kind of complacent.
Right.
So taking steps out of your comfort zone. So for lack of a better one, maybe you're in a community organization and you're volunteering, and maybe you're on the front lines of the volunteering and doing great. You participate in a group and you show up every day and you're doing great. But maybe there's this desire in you to maybe lead something within that.
Right.
So leaving the familiar is I just have to show up and participate.
Right.
I'm going to now take leadership on this because I have a passion for it, or take a bigger role.
Yeah.
Those steps are difficult. Those are the ones that keep us stuck where we're at in life.
So it's putting ourselves in positions where we're going to get stretched, where we're going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Those are areas where we begin to overcome fears.
Right, and you can personalize it too. You can go, okay, maybe I have an anger issue, and so your cycle is you blow up and then you have to apologize and make amends, but then you never do anything to fix the anger.
Right.
So the uncomfortable step or the unfamiliar step has to be, okay, now I'm going to have to address it. Maybe I should go to an anger management class.
And there's fear in that.
Because you're going to discover stuff about yourself.
And you're going to expose yourself.
Exactly.
Like, okay, I got to admit this.
Right. So those are steps of leaving the unfamiliar, but those are key steps even though you're petrified.
Right. That's good. That's good. I know, when people finally do go get help, whether it's an addiction or, like you said, anger or whatever, that it's the fear that's keeping them. So I'm just going to be more comfortable in my dysfunction than stretching and getting out of that comfort zone. Because you begin to imagine all the stuff that might happen, and people will judge me, and I'm going to be exposed. People will think less of me. All of those things.
And there's on the other side of that, that's a personal one of growth. But what if you're like at a job and you like your job and you're thankful for your job, but you're unfulfilled in your job?
Right.
So leaving out of your comfort zone would be, I'm going to have to take some schooling or some kind of thing to better myself.
Right.
And the fear is okay, I'm going to have to adjust my schedule.
Right.
That's leaving that comfortable schedule I've got.
Right.
Number two is,
I like life the way it is right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Or potentially it's going to be hard in the classes, or I may fail a class or two, or So those are all comfort zones that you have to leave in order to grow, and that's courage. Even though you don't do it perfectly, that's courage. It's a good step to take.
Yeah, and sometimes it's those. Fear can be a really thin veil. And once you step through it, you realize, it's not. I was with my parents last night, and we were talking about a person we know that's working in Cairo, Egypt, and there's a lot of unrest. And then we're going to Mexico, and so my parents, who haven't traveled a lot, they're kind of like, well, is that dangerous? Is that dangerous? Is that? But once you go on those trips and you realize, the most dangerous part of going to Mexico is driving through Stockton.
Right.
I apologize for all of you Stocktonites. That's not even my joke. But
that's good though.
Once you go there, and you've been to Mexico, you go, oh no.
Right.
No, you can build up a lot of fear.
Right.
And then we've been there, and you go, no, it's a lot safer than a lot of places here in the States, where we go.
Yeah, and maybe it's not even the dangerous part, or it's the awkward fear. Like, how am I going to communicate? Because that was one of my fears. I was less afraid about the stuff going around. I was more afraid. Well, how am I going to communicate? Yeah. And it's awkward.
Yeah.
And you're like sitting there, go hola, and they go hola, and that's it.
I never had that fear because I'm fluent in Spanish.
So I would feel I couldn't communicate, but those are all good,
and then once you get
steps.
there and you realize, okay, it's all, we can build it up bigger than it is.
Right, and I've learned this, that smiling does a big deal.
Yes.
Just smile.
Yes. And hola is not a bad word.
It's not a bad word.
Hi.
Hi, yeah.
All right, so don't compare.
Right.
And then stretch yourself, get out of your comfort zone.
Right.
And then what else?
I think the third thing is that it's just the courage to keep showing up.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
And you said it earlier, which I think was very appropriate. It takes courage to keep showing up and being a parent.
Yeah.
It does some days. Some days you just want to bail because the season of life you're in is tough. You're not connecting with your kid, or there's some tough roads ahead, and courage is just getting up and going, no, I'm going to be a parent today.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop being a parent.
Yeah.
Courage is, a job that you're unsatisfied with, but that's the place where it supports your family.
Yeah.
And you really don't want to do it, but you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you drive through the rush hour traffic, and you show up and you work.
Yeah.
That's courage.
In fact, that is mainly what courage is.
Absolutely.
We think of courage in the movies or glamorous, or the people who get their names in the history books, but most of courage is just every day showing up.
Absolutely.
Doing the right thing.
Yeah.
With no fanfare, with nothing, just doing that's courage.
Right, and there's courage and persistence or perseverance, they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Because if you keep showing up, which has a combination of perseverance and courage, when you keep showing up and doing the right thing, eventually, if you can't see it right away, eventually good things come from that. It really does. It's just a fact.
There's a generation before ours, or 2 generations before ours, that there was a persistence and a courage because you just kind of were consistently courageous in life. Now, going back to your first point, we have a very mobile society, and so we can avoid, people can, hey, things get tough, you move here and then you go over here, and you don't address some of these things that can only happen over time.
Right.
And so sometimes it's it's just showing up.
Yeah.
It's showing up and going, wow, this is, but you begin, it's called maturity, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My heart is for all of us, because I myself battle this in different ways, and I think we all do.
Yeah.
But my heart is people allow their fears to polarize them. And what I mean is they sit there and they desire this or that. They desire to move forward in whatever area we're talking about. But because of that fear, they just stay stuck.
Yeah.
And that's that hurts. I mean, that makes me sad. I mean, I'm not perfect at it, but I just hope that people would take steps,
Yeah. Especially when it comes to being parents or in a marriage, in relationships, we can get stuck and it affects our kids. It affects, our family.
Right.
Because we're not willing to take that step because
Right.
we're allowing fear to control rather than doing the right thing.
Right.
That's
right.
a huge one.
There's one more thought on this that is really important, and this has to do with, again, not just how God feels about us, but what God wants for us. The Bible says that God didn't give us a spirit of fear.
Right.
He gave us a spirit of courage. The Bible says when he was talking to Joshua, who was going to take a leadership role, he was going to move out of his comfort zone. He says, "Be strong and courageous." I mean, that's the desire of God for our lives.
Yeah.
And there's also promises that come along with that. When we move forward in life and face our fears, whether it's to change a dysfunction in our life or to stretch ourselves and grow, to take on more in life and make changes in the world, when we make the decision to show up every day, there's a promise from God that says He's going to be with us in that.
Yeah.
He's going to help us with that because that's what He wants for us.
Yeah.
And I think people, maybe sometimes have this perception of God that He's out there, He's just kind of watching the chess pieces move and, He's not really involved. No, He is involved, and He wants that for you and me.
Yeah, that's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
You mentioned that scripture, but when God's involved in our life, we're going to face fears. Fear is just inevitable, but it says that God doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but He gives us power to overcome, love, and a sound mind.
Right.
And that's kind of the fruit of what happens, and we can combat fear with those things.
Absolutely.
Love, power, and a sound mind.
Yeah.
And that's what you say, that's God's involvement
Right.
in this thing, and He wants to be involved.
Right.
Cool. Any
Yeah.
last thoughts, wrap-ups? This is good. Very concise, very hopeful.
Good, right on.
Much more hopeful than LeBron James coming to the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, that's not going to happen,
yeah,
is it?
No.
I would just encourage someone that may say, okay, it struck a chord. I have been polarized by this one thing. I haven't been able to move past this area, whether it's personal or outside, the whole thing. Take one step. And that one step might be, for some, just looking at the college catalog and seeing the classes I need to take. That might be calling a friend and saying, hey, I'm gonna move this direction. I need your encouragement, your support. What do you think? In just one simple step, get
Right.
moving. Because most of the time we get inspired,
Right.
we get enthusiastic, and then the show's over, or the talk's over, or the moment's over,
Right.
and we just sit there.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned, and I think, is being courageous or feeling like you're being courageous is kind of a good feeling, and it makes you want to be more courageous.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you who maybe didn't know how courageous you're being, because you keep showing up and you keep showing up, you're courageous.
Yep.
So that's a good feeling.
Absolutely.
Like, well, then I want to be more courageous. And once you say you do some of these steps, it becomes kind of addictive in a good way.
Yep.
So good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And here's one last thought.
Yes.
The Raiders will win
Oh,
6
jeez.
games this year. 6.
6? That's all you're hoping for?
Well, they won 4 last year, so that's
Okay.
a 2-game improvement.
All right.
And the Raiders
Okay.
play the Niners on December 7th.
Yeah.
And if there's one game that I want,
Yeah.
it's that one.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. Really. So that's where the Raiders are at. A lifetime Raiders fan, that's your goal this year. 6.
Well, we're going to do a show on disappointment,
Yeah.
and that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and also just being realistic. So you're being realistic. That's good. Good. You could be in denial. Like a lot of Raider fans call it, oh, they're going to win 12 games. They're going to win.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, see, good leaders, they define reality, right? And then they offer hope. And I have just done both.
Oh. One last question before we end this show. How many Raider fans are left? Is there?
There's a lot.
Is there really?
There's a loyal fan base, and I'm one of them.
Yeah, there's at least 30 left, so that's good. All right, thanks. This is very good, very good, and hopefully we updated you on some sporting events too. So thanks, man.
All right.
Thanks for being with us here on The Basics of Life, and we'll see you next time.